Something about Toronto fills me full of wonder. Something about Toronto makes me buckle under. Was it love that brought me, or did I come by blunder? Something about Toronto town. Many cultures blending, a taste of every nation. Traffic never ending, sports and celebration. Chinatown and glitter, date night at the theater. Something about Toronto town. Living a crazy, wild city scene. Subway, streetcars, college and Queen. Love it, hate it, that's all right. It's my life, my home. I was crossing at the corner of Spadina and College, and on the other side of the street, I see my oldest friend, Marian Mozetic. We grew up together here in the North End. Our houses were joined, and the wall was so thin we could talk to each other right through the wall. What was he doing in Toronto? Marian, what the hell are you doing here? I live here. I'm going to the University of Toronto. I'm studying music. What are you doing here? Well, I just moved here. And he said, it's about time. It's about time? What do you mean it's about time? He said, I got a class. I got to run. And he was gone. I guess Toronto was going to be my home. I got a place to live in the Kensington Market. Paretta's Pizzeria was on the corner of Harvard and Robert Streets. And Mrs. Paretta made the most delicious pizza. And Mr. Paretta tended to the customers. And the kids ran around as if the pizzeria was their rec room. And directly next door to the pizzeria was a Primo Scream therapy clinic. Mr. Paretta didn't know what to make of it. He said, Charlie, these are people, oh, they scream, scream, scream all the time, oh. Why they scream? I said, well, Mr. Paretta, it's like this. They have this theory. When they were babies, they didn't get enough screaming out, so the screaming got locked up inside of them. And say they go to the Primo Scream therapy clinic to scream it out. Well, they pay money for this? I said, yeah, the guy who runs the screaming is a dottore, a psychologo. But Charlie, every day, every week, all the time, scream, scream. Huh? Oh, Mr. Paretta, it's different people coming to scream at different times. It's not the same people. Hey, kids, no run, no run. What do you want on your pizza? Now, there on College, at Spadina, there was a sign that said, Clarke Institute of Psychiatry. And I thought, yeah, I was reading One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest at the time. It's a great book by Ken Kesey. It's about a psychiatric institution that's run by a terrible big nurse and a guy who comes in and liberates it. And I thought, Clarke Institute of Psychiatry. That makes sense. I'm studying psychology and the sign says psychiatry. So I march right in there and I say, who do I see about a job? And the lady says, are you a doctor? No. Are you a nurse? No. Are you a psychometrist? No. Are you a social worker? No. Are you a psychologist? Well, not yet. And she chucks out my long hair and beard and scruffy clothes and she said, well, there is a position called psychiatric assistant. And I say, psychiatric assistant? Yeah, that sounds good. She says, well, the person who hires the psychiatric assistants isn't here. That's the director of nursing. She's on vacation. She's on vacation. All right, make me an appointment for when she comes back. she looks at me oddly and says, okay, that'll be 2 weeks. Thursday at 1:30. Thanks. So 2 weeks goes by. And I'm spiffing myself up for the interview. And I go in there, and the director of nursing is in there, and she looks up at me and she says, why do you have an appointment? I said, well, I heard of this position, psychiatric assistant, and I'm reading One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And my father was in a psychiatric hospital in Hamilton for most of my life, and I'm studying psychology at the University of Toronto, and I live just around the corner. And she hires me. She hires me! But I was told that it'd be a month before I start working. And in the course of that month, one of my friends in Hamilton here was getting married, and I was invited to the stag. So I'm making my way to the stag. And this guy picks me up. Very articulate. He looks like Edward G. Robinson, and he likes to chat. And he says, I'm not going all the way to Hamilton. I'll have to let you off at one of the exits. I'm going to the lakefront to dip my feet into the water. My children are driving me insane. And I say, oh, well, you might have trouble making it back to your car. And he says, pardon? I say, well, that's Lake Ontario you're dipping your feet into. Your feet might dissolve. He says, and what do you do, young man? And I say, oh, I got a job at the Clarke Institute of Psychiatry. I start in a month. He says, the Clarke? I'm familiar with the Clarke. And I say, oh, do you work there or something? And he says, I'm very familiar with the Clarke. And that's all he would tell me. And he let me off at the next exit, and I guess he went to dip his feet into the water. Smoking up and grinning, being late for classes, rush hours got me spinning, moving with the masses, manic moon above me, gotta find someone to love me here in this Toronto town. Fast food so exotic, Blintz's, tacos, patties, young seats so chaotic, strippers and sugar daddies, Caravana, gay pride, High Park for a bike ride, here in this Toronto town. Living a crazy, wild city scene, subway, streetcars, college and Queen. Love it, hate it, it's all right. It's my life, my home, my own. On my first day at work, they taught me the ropes. They showed me around. It was evening, and one patient was on continuous observation. He was striking out, and there was danger that he would be suicidal. Now, continuous observation means the patient is in his room, and I'm outside in the hallway, and I just watch him. He was agitated, talking a mile a minute, but I just sit there. And after an hour, a nurse took over, and I went on to other duties, other patients, and when my shift was over, I got on the elevator and went down to the ground floor, and when I got there, the security guard was there, and he stopped me. And he said, you sit right there. And he went on to lock the tempered glass doors. And I knew that he thought I was a patient. Now, even though it was my first day at work, I learned something. I knew that you should never deny that you're a patient and never, ever claim that you're sane. Well, he disappeared, and I took out my book and read One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest for the second time. And I just relaxed. And as I was reading, there was a pounding on the locked glass door. It was winter and the snow was falling hard. And outside, there was this guy in his pajamas, barefoot, smoking a cigarette, banging in the door and making wild open the door gestures. And I saw it was a guy that I'd done continuous observation with. And he knew I was staff. And I could see he's thinking, why the fuck isn't this guy letting me in? Well, for one thing, I didn't have a key. And for number two, those were not my instructions. So I tried to relax with my book. And after a while, the nursing director came down and said, "Oh, Charlie, it's you." And I said, "Yeah." I said, the security guard told me to just sit there. And she said, "Oh, Charlie, I'm so sorry." And I said, "Oh, don't apologize to me. Apologize to that guy." Apparently, he wanted to buy cigarettes, and he went out to do it barefoot in his pajamas. So they let him in. And as he walked past me, he said, "What the fuck? What the fuck? Are you crazy or something?" And that was my first day at work. Wintertime blues, snow in my shoes, a running nose and tons of clothes I've gotta use. Christmas lights are flashing upon my wintertime blues. Sloppy white snow, traffic gone slow. I dream of southern lands where winter winds don't blow. Christmas lights are flashing upon my wintertime blues. Spring and summer got their troubles, dark days in autumn too. Brush strokes from the winter winds paint the whole world blue. There's blues in the night sky, blues in the deep blue sea. And even Santa's eyes, they seem more blue than they should be. More blue than they should be. Christmas lights are flashing upon my wintertime, upon my wintertime, upon my wintertime blues. The Clarke Institute was the most prestigious teaching hospital in North America. People called it the Inn on the Clarke. Only the most interesting patients were treated there. The boring, chronic patients were sent up the road. That's what we called it, up the road to 999 Queen Street. The Clarke was at the forefront at the movement away from the incarceration model of treatment for psychiatric patients. You just walk in the door and you take the elevator. Nobody there to screen you. And you take the elevator to the floor where you work or you're visiting, and you get off, and you're facing the nursing station. It's completely open. So if a patient wanted to escape, there was no barrier. He'd just check the nursing station to see when nobody was watching, get on the elevator, and he was gone. On the first floor, there was an auditorium that held what was called grand rounds. If a patient was exhibiting interesting psychotic behavior or an interesting pathology, it was presented to the staff at grand rounds. And sometimes we had a visiting psychiatrist from, say, Romania, who gave a lecture on schizophrenia and vampires in Transylvania. And we, the psych assistants, were allowed to go to any of the grand rounds. We were like flies on the wall. It was a secret of secrets that psychiatrists didn't really know a whole lot about the line between sanity and insanity. It was the heyday of interesting insanity. Now, between the elevators, there was a bulbous ashtray. And after being there about 3 or 4 days, I felt comfortable enough to practice my karate if nobody was looking. And I would use the bulbous ashtray as my target. And I would give it front kicks and side kicks, roundhouse kicks, just missing. And on one of my front kicks, I made contact with the ashtray, and cigarette butts and ashes went flying up into the air. And just then the elevator doors opened. And I spotted this guy, an elegant 3-piece suit, surrounded by well-dressed young men. He was the god. I knew right away that guy was the god. And it was the guy who picked me up hitchhiking to Hamilton. And he looked at me as a veil of ashes continued to float down. And the elevator doors were closing. And he said, "You." And the elevator doors weren't quite closed yet. And through the crack, I said, "You." And I asked the nursing director, "Who is that guy?" She said, "That's Dr. Rakov." I said, "Oh, what's he do?" She says, "Don't you know? He runs the Clarke Institute." I went, "Oh." Oh. I've got songs that set me free. Power sometimes baffles me. Lost in gray reality, and I ponder to be or not to be. Making moves I can't explain. Dancing in the neon rain. Is my poetry insane? And I wonder what will become of me. And the future rises up like a mountain I must climb. And I shed a tear for the life I leave behind. Do I own this moment, or is it just borrowed time? And I ponder, therefore I am, therefore I am. My fellow psych assistants were handsome, well-dressed, well-groomed young men, and I felt like the black sheep. When there was an all-male staff call, the only person that was a female that showed up was the nurse with her needle. And my fellow psych assistants would be grappling to immobilize the patient with 2 guys on one arm, I got it, 2 guys on one leg, another 2 guys on another leg. But not me. Not me. And they wondered, why does Charlie not need any help holding that arm down? And it's because I'm causing this guy a lot of pain. And they're just looking at me. I knew something about pressure points and twists that cause a lot of pain. And they were noble patients. They didn't say, "Oh, fuck, yeah, you're hurting me, man. You're fucking hurting me." No. They just looked at me, and I looked at him, and I would relax the pressure, and they would relax their arm, while my fellow psych assistants were getting whacked in the head from flailing arms and flailing legs. But for my whole life in Hamilton, it was my objective not to get whacked in the head. Elaine, this beautiful student nurse doing her placement with us, said, "Charlie, could you tell Teddy that I like him?" I said, "Tell him yourself." She said, "Come on, could you put a good word in for me?" I was going to the underground parking lot to get my bicycle, and Teddy was getting his. I said, "Teddy, you know that chick, that gorgeous chick, Elaine, that's doing your placement with us? Well, she likes you." And he said, "Charlie," and he takes a couple of more steps, and he said, "I'm gay." I went, "Gay? Oh, I went to the gay parade last year." And he rolled his eyes and said, "I live with Doug." I said, "You live with Doug?" Another psych assistant. He said, "Daniel and Harry and Phil and Sam and all the psych assistants are gay." Whoa! I was amazed. The woman who hired all of the psych assistants hired all gay guys except for me. At her retirement party, I approached her. I said, "Gilda, about your hiring practice." She said, "Charlie, I know what you're about to ask. I didn't know those guys were gay when I hired them. I just really liked their attitude. And they were so cute." I said, "Oh, why'd you hire me?" She said, "Well, you're cute. Look, I don't really know what I was thinking when I hired you." She said, "You were strange, and I thought you might fit in." So I started hanging around with all these gay guys, interesting gay guys. And boy, could they throw a party. One time, they rented a bus, and we dropped acid, and we went to the Toronto Zoo. Oh, man. Hey, man. And another time, it was Doug's birthday. So they rented a movie theater, Cinema Lumiere, on College Street. And they ran the movie Fellini's Clowns with no sound. And from the speakers blared out the rock and roll music of the day, you know, the Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin. And people were dancing on the stage, and they looked like little silhouettes dancing as the movie Clowns rolled behind them. They really knew how to throw a party, these guys. Yeah, in the theater we were smoking up and drinking booze, celebrating the birthday. And then there was free popcorn, free ice cream. Well, my kind of people, my new friends, my colleagues. And as outrageous as I was, as a guy from Hamilton, I became more outrageous. Sometimes you just gotta let go. Sometimes you just gotta let go. Sometimes you just gotta let go. Sing and dance and let the good times roll. Sometimes you gotta let go. Sometimes things are gonna go right. Sometimes things are gonna go right. Sometimes things are gonna go right. After the storm, there's gonna be sunlight. Sometimes things are gonna go right. Sometimes let go. Be strong. Find love. Hang on, everybody. Let go. Be strong. Find love. Hang on. Let go. find love. Hang on one more, let go. Get strong, find love. Hang on, hang on, hang on, hang on, hang on. Of all my activities, the most important to me was music. I learned that the harmonica was an instrument and not just a toy. I've been playing harmonica since I was a kid, but I didn't really know what it could do until I moved to Toronto. And I started listening to Ryerson Radio Blues on Saturday afternoon. And the guy would say, the announcer, he would say, that was Sonny Boy Williamson on the harmonica. And I thought, harmonica? Holy shit, I thought it was a guitar or a violin or a saxophone. Harmonica. And I tried hard to learn to play blues harmonica. No matter how hard I tried, I just couldn't find the blues. One patient, Beatrice, will forever be in my heart. Her psychosis was the magic of cats. Her 2 Siamese cats taught her to read minds. She was ultra sensitive. And I was sitting with her, and she said, Charlie, you're not made of matter like the rest. You're made of only spirit. I know, because I too am made of only spirit. I know your spirit. I felt your spirit when you played harmonica in the TV room. Would you play harmonica for me? I said, okay. She applauded and said, wow, I've never played harmonica. Can I try? I said, sure. And she put it to her lips. The magic of cats. The magic of cats. A world full of rats. Lost in the blues. Lost in the blues. I am your muse. I am your muse. I said, damn it, how did you do that, Beatrice? How'd you do that? No matter how hard I try, I just can't find the blues. And she said, Charlie, you don't find the blues. The blues will find you. And there was this other patient. His name was Phillip. He was brilliant. He was into mathematics, physics, astronomy. Psychotic as hell, but so brilliant. Just a peace-loving young man. And I was doing continuous observation on him. And he said, Charlie, why are you watching me? Why are you watching me all the time? I'm not going to hurt myself. I'm not going to kill myself. Charlie, I don't have the guts to commit suicide, and with my fucking luck, I'll live to be 93. And at that moment, I found the blues. I'm crawling in the gutter, I'm crying constantly. With my fucking luck, I'll live to be 93. Got them blues, got them blues. Got them blues, got them blues. Them down and dirty blues. When it chased me from my mama's, down and dirty blues. When it chased me from my mama's, down and dirty blues. When it chased me from my mama's womb. One evening, a Portuguese patient was admitted. His name was Jesus. That means Jesus. While hitchhiking, he was thrown out of a moving car. He was a mess. And he was clutching a Bible that was all tied up in rope. He wouldn't let it go. I said, "Hey, Jesus, why is your Bible all tied up with rope?" And he said, "I've trapped the devil." He was a great guy. I liked his attitude. Somebody had to trap the devil. It might as well be Jesus. And on another evening, an Italian patient was admitted. And I got to know him quite well. We could talk. We had the same language. And he told everybody that his wife was being screwed by his cousin. Told everybody this. As a matter of fact, he gave a description, a vivid description of the time and the place, even the positions that they were screwing in. He was so convincing that we all started thinking that maybe he's not psychotic. Maybe his cousin is screwing his wife. Well, his wife came in, and I had an interview with her without her husband, Antonio. She was 60 years old, modest, respectable woman. And she said, "Sei convinto, huh? Huh? You're convinced," she said, huh? "Pensi che forse, neanche forse, you think that the cousin of Antonio and me, huh?" I said, "Signora, è possibile." She said, "No, non è possibile, è morto." Said, "Dead." I said, "Il cugino, the cousin, is dead?" She said, 15 anni. As long as that, he's been dead for 15 years? She said, "You tell the dottore." And I tell the dottore, and we increased his medication. One of the things I really loved to do was to take patients for a walk when I'm not supposed to. I wasn't allowed to. Only a nurse is supposed to sign them out. But I didn't give a shit. I didn't give a shit. I'm going to take them for a walk, I'd say, and they're going to come back with me, too. So I'd ask them to finish their dessert. "Come on, you guys, finish your dessert. Put on your shoes, and let's go for a walk." And we did. We did. We went for a walk to the Kensington Market. They loved it. And I didn't have to tell them, "All right." They weren't going to escape. They knew. It was Charlie taking us for a walk when he's not supposed to. Again. And I came back with them, too. All of them. And the nurses just wagged their finger from the nursing station at me. That was one of my ideas, the walk. I had two other ideas. A massage therapist. The unit needed a massage therapist. Psychiatric patients hardly ever get touched. They're treated like lepers. I made a formal request, a written request to the nursing director for a massage therapist so the patients could be touched once in a while. And she just smiled. My second idea was a piano. Our unit needed a piano. This was the inn on the Clarke. The patients, they were articulate, educated, sophisticated. Most of them had had piano lessons. So I made a request for a piano, and they told me there were no funds for a piano. And I said, well, let's have a fundraiser. Let's have a variety show, and we'll put the money toward a piano. And we'll have it at the Grand Rounds Auditorium. It's never used for anything but Grand Rounds. It holds 300 people. And I was told, it's not the protocol to use the Grand Rounds Auditorium for anything but Grand Rounds. And they smiled. I was at the bank across the street from the Clarke Institute, lining up to make a withdrawal. And behind me, lined up, was Dr. Rakoff. You may remember, the God, the guy who picked me up hitchhiking. And as usual, I was writing a song. Well, my. And I felt a tap on my shoulder. And I said, oh, hi, Dr. Rakoff. He said, young man, Charlie, isn't it? I said, yeah. He said, might I inquire as to what you are doing now? I said, yeah, I'm writing a song. And may I be privy to your song? I said, well, it's not finished, but it goes like this. Revel in your melancholy, sink into your sadness. Hearty laughter won't seem folly, nor will downright madness. And he said, hearty laughter won't seem folly, nor will downright madness. I said, yes. And he said, yes. Yes, indeed. The next day when I went to work, I was called into the nursing director's office. She said, Charlie, about that variety show. I said, it's okay. It's okay, just forget about it. Don't worry about it. She said, Charlie, you can have the Grand Rounds Auditorium. I said, what? What happened? She said, go and book it for the day that you want to have your variety show. But, she said, let's see what you can do. Holy shit. Now I was on the hook. I'd never organized a variety show in my life. I don't even organize my cutlery. I didn't know what the hell I was going to do. Shit, man. And I thought, a name. The variety show's got to have a name. We're on the 11th floor. Escape Hatch 11. That's right. Escape Hatch 11. It would be an escape to another world for everyone. And I made posters. Escape Hatch 11. Sign up here to perform, whatever. An instrument, sing, whatever. Nurses, psych assistants, doctors. Posters everywhere. And I waited 2 weeks. No volunteers. 3 weeks before the concert. I thought, shit. God. What, am I going to have to run this thing myself? Am I have to sing and dance and do everything myself? Hey, no, I got to get people to sign up. I got to get people to sign up. I mean, what fucking idiot would do a one-man show? A simple minstrel's tune brings gladness, maybe gloom. Go on and take a chance. Be daring when you dance. The wizard longs to teach. There's rainbows within reach. And children wise and bold seek treasures beyond gold. Revel in your melancholy, sink into your sadness. Hearty laughter won't seem folly, nor will downright madness. Life is but a dream. We're puppets in a scene. The world is just a stage. Take a bow and turn the page. Take a bow and turn the page. It was a full moon night, and I was doing rounds. That means checking up on patients. I love doing rounds on a full moon. Nobody is sleeping in a psychiatric hospital on a full moon night. It was 3 a.m. and I was at Beatrice's room at the door, and I watched her. She was painting with watercolors. She was carefully dipping her brush, then touching a color and lightly stroking the page. And I said, Beatrice, can I take a closer look? She said, okay. And there on the page were intertwining plants, and growing on the plants, instead of flowers, were the faces of the psychiatric patients in our unit. And her own face was growing from the plants behind. And I said, Beatrice, this is very interesting. I love it. And she said, if you can guess the title, you can have it. I said, Paradise. She said, it's yours. You can pick it up tomorrow when it dries. And it hangs in my living room to this very day. And the next day, I went to pick it up. And she said, Charlie, about this variety show. I said, nobody's signing up. But you know what, Beatrice? It's going to go on. It's going to go on. If I have to do it all myself, I have to sing and dance and play the harmonica. This show's going to go on. She said, I could sing a song. I said, yeah? What song? She said, a song I wrote. I said, yeah? What's it about? She said, it's about what happens when you lose everything. I said, yeah, that'd be great. Thanks. Thanks. And the next day, magically, there was a trickle of patients and a trickle of nurses and a trickle of psych assistants and a trickle of psychiatric residents. And the Filipino nurses and the Jamaican nurses all said they would cook food and serve food and have food available for people to take home. I couldn't believe what was happening. Writers, musicians, newspaper reporters, all patients, started writing. They wrote scripts for themselves, scripts for the other patients, scripts for the staff. Something was happening. Something was happening beyond me. It's like when the bullseye gets big and I was just this little tiny dot. And suddenly, I was surrounded by this thing, this energy. And I was the MC. I was that dot. And on the day of the concert, the Clarke Institute had to close. Everybody wanted to come see the show. 300 people had bought tickets. And the tickets were on sale for sliding scale kind of prices. And contributions were accepted. And the food was being served. Wow. And I looked out in the auditorium, and it was filling up. And then it was full. And it was up to me to start the show. I was the MC. I was on one side of the stage, and on the other side of the stage was Beatrice. And she was poised like a sprinter ready to run. She wanted to be the first one on the show. She wanted to get it over with. She was so panicky. I could see the look of panic on her face, and I thought, she has a right to be nervous. She's a psychotic psychiatric patient, for Christ's sakes. Holy shit, I should escort her off the stage. But no, there were 300 people up there. There was a piano to buy. No, the show must go on. And I crossed the stage, and I took Beatrice's hand, and I brought her to center stage. And I picked up my harmonica, and she sang. What you gonna do when the well runs dry? You find that there really ain't no pie in the sky. What you gonna do? How you gonna make yourself high when the well runs dry? You can't buy bread with pocket lint. Can't manufacture money when you don't own a mint. Wear them rags and learn what not to buy when the well runs dry. When the well runs dry and your hungry children cry, you can't even afford to die when the well runs dry. When the well runs dry. What you gonna do when the well runs dry? You know that there ain't no pie in the sky. What you gonna do? How you gonna make yourself high when the well runs dry? When the well runs dry and your hungry children cry, you can't even afford to die when the well runs dry. When the well runs dry. When the well runs dry. And I wrote this song called Pills They Keep Popping Into Me. There was this patient named Rosemary. She had never performed in her life. She was your typical rich Rosedale lady. And I don't even think she was insane. The Clarke Institute was the kind of place where when husbands got tired of their wives, they declared them insane and brought them to the Clarke instead of taking them to Florida or something. And they didn't mind being at the Clarke. And I had Rosemary sing the song that I wrote. Pills, they keep popping into me. That is the thing they do here in psychiatry. Nowhere I can flee from pills, they keep popping into me, they keep popping. So I just did me some talking to myself. I said, self, you gotta find a way back into health beyond chlorpromazine. Those pills, they keep popping into me, they keep popping. But there's one thing I know. Those pills they push to treat me won't defeat me. It won't be long till happiness comes out to greet me. Keep popping into me. Sometimes I wonder about my doctor's sanity. When will I be free from pills they keep popping into me, they keep popping. Just let me be. I just wanna be me. Just make me free. I just wanna be me, 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 me. And then I handed Rosemary a brown paper bag, and she reached into it, and she grabbed a big handful of multicolored jelly beans. And all the psychiatrists were sitting in the front row, including Dr. Rakoff, and she threw these jelly beans into the laps of all the psychiatrists in the front row. Yeah. Yeah. And that's all it went. There were songs and skits and stand-up, and one patient was even a jazz dancer. And there was this skit. It was written by the newspaper editor, who was a patient. And this patient acted like a psychiatrist very effectively because he'd been in and out of the Clarke for years. And another patient acted like a psychotic patient. And that was no trouble for him because he was a psychotic patient. And they had this therapy session. And after the therapy session, an alarm went off to tell the psychiatrist that the session was over. He went, oh, okay. It said, your next appointment will be, and he gave a card to the patient, and the patient left. And the psychiatrist got up. He put on his hat, he put on his coat, and he took a banana out of his pocket, and he exited. Standing ovation. And we made a lot of money. We made enough money to buy a piano. But how do you buy a piano? I don't play piano. There was this patient that was recently admitted, the most psychotic patient that I'd ever encountered. She thought she was the Duchess de Rothschild. And she booked herself into the Royal York Hotel. And she was there 2 weeks until staff got suspicious and figured that she's not paying her bills. And then realized she's not a duchess. And then became aware that she's psychotic as hell. So to the Clarke she came. And I became her primary therapist. Oh, she was a tall, statuesque woman. Carried herself so very well, very haughty, dressed well, lots of jewelry, costume jewelry. She had what's called a fixed delusion. And so the nurses called her the Duchess. Why argue? But her name was Mary. So I called her Mary. And she accepted that. And I was sitting with her. I said, Mary, I had a suspicion that she had piano lessons. You know, I could tell she had all the earmarks, especially her hands. And I said, have you ever had piano lessons? And she got up and said, oh, yes. Yes, I was quite the pianist in my youth. Amateur, of course, but quite the pianist. And I said, Mary, I want to buy a piano, and I want you to tell me whether or not it's any good. Well, I would be happy to oblige. Yes. So I got one of the nurses to sign her out. And we were quite the couple as we walked toward the subway. This haughty, statuesque woman and this bearded, scruffy hippie, her dressed with fake fur, and she had her hands in a fake muff to keep them warm, and a hat that she must have gotten in some museum or something. And we went to the subway. And the subway took us to a bus line. We transferred, and we took that bus to the end of the line, and we got off the bus, and there was nothing. Just a road into the horizon that was snowy, and the wind was blowing, and there was nothing. So I did what I normally do, Duchess or no Duchess. And this beat-up Volkswagen Beetle pulled up. And the Duchess went into the back seat, and I got into the front. And she was a good sport about it. And this Volkswagen Beetle took us to a gas station, which was near where the piano was supposed to be. And I used the phone, and I said, "Hello, this is Charlie, the guy who called about the piano. Yeah, I'm here with a friend, and we got here by public transportation, and we don't have the means, the means." And he said, "Oh, I understand." He said, "A car will be there to fetch you in 10 minutes. And the Duchess and I waited. And this stretch limousine arrived, a black, shiny, beautiful stretch limousine with a chauffeur with a hat and uniform. And the chauffeur got out of the car and went over to let the Duchess in. And before she went in, she gave me this look. And there we were, me and the Duchess in the stretch limousine. And lo and behold, we arrived at a mansion, a stately, beautiful mansion, gorgeously decorated for Christmas. And we walked in, and the rooms, huge, mahogany, crystal chandelier, marble table, and the tallest decorated Christmas tree I'd ever seen in my life. And the Duchess walked around nodding her approval. Oh, yes. Indeed, yes. Yes, yes, yes. And I said, "Wow, what a place." I said, "But we came here for the piano." And he said, "Oh, yes, the piano's over there. It's over there." And the Duchess approached the man of the house, and I intercepted her before she started telling anecdotes about the Rothschild family. And I said, "Is it in good shape?" And he said, oh, yes, we're getting a grand piano." And the Duchess said, "Oh, a grand piano. Yes, of course. Why, when I was a child, I said, "Mary," I said, "Do you mind if my friend tries the piano?" He said, "Of course." And the Duchess approached the piano as regally as she possibly could. She lifted the lid, and she extended her elegant fingers and began to play. She was a little rusty. And she said, "It's all right." And I said, "All right." "It's all right, okay, we'll buy it." I said, "The asking price." And I reached into my pocket and I took out a wad of cash and I put it down. And the guy looked at me and the Duchess and said, "Where is the piano going, if you don't mind my asking?" And I said, "Oh, it's going to the Clarke Institute of Psychiatry." And he gave both of us a second look and said, "How will it be transported?" I said, "Transported? And on what day?" He said, "Oh, yeah. I got a friend with a pickup truck. He'll come and pick it up. He'll come around, He said, "A piano should not be delivered. No, a piano should be delivered by a professional mover of pianos." I said, "Yeah, well, that's all. I haven't got." And he looked at me, and then he looked at the Duchess, and the Duchess looked at him. As if from a very lofty place. And he said, "Well, I suppose I can have it delivered for you." I said, "Thanks." He said, "Upon delivery, it needs to be tuned." I said, "Tuned? Well..." And the Duchess' look did not waver. And he said, well, I'll send a tuner out as well. And the Duchess smiled politely, and she looked at me, and I swear she gave me a wink. And the chauffeur took us to the subway, and we made it back to the Clarke. And 3 days later, the piano was delivered. And a tuner came with it. It was installed on our unit on the 11th floor. Wow! And the first one to play it, of course, was the Duchess. She approached it gracefully, opened it, again with those beautiful fingers of hers, and she hesitated to raise expectations, of course. And then she began to play. And after playing, she would bow, and she said, I had only the best of piano lessons as a child. My father, the Duke de Rothschild, loved music. And she played it often. And I couldn't help but think that it helped her make the transition to regular life. I left the Clarke. I finished my education at the University of Toronto. I became a social worker. I got married. Years passed. I became a mental health and addictions consultant in Kingston. That's what I was at that time. 15 years since I'd been to the Clarke. And I was walking with my daughter Selina in the old neighborhood on Hartword Street, not far from the Clarke. She was 8 years old. And I said, honey, I'd like to go to the Clarke Institute. She said, why, Dad? I said, I don't know. I used to work there. I want to see what it's like. She said, okay. She was very self-assured for an 8-year-old girl. And there we were, on the 11th floor of the Clarke Institute, and there was nothing. There was nothing but barriers and barrenness. It's like a place that used to be a gold mining town, and now it was a ghost town. There were no staff. There were no patients to be seen. Nobody was milling around. It was incredibly different. And a security guard came up to me and said, what do you want here? And I said, well, I used to work here. I want to see if there's anybody here that I know, like Senna. Is Senna here? He said, Senna? I said, okay, is Dr. Rakoff, Dr. Prasad, are they here? He said, Dr. Rakoff is retired. He does have an office here. I said, can I see him? He said, no, he's not in. I said, Ausa. Is Ausa here? He said, Ausa? Yes, Ausa's here. I'll get her. And I was standing there with Selina, and in the distance, I saw this white-haired Filipino woman. And I looked at her, and she looked at me, and I had gray hair, and I didn't have a beard. And if this was a movie, there'd be smoke between us. And she walked toward me, and she opened the gate, and she said, Charlie. And we hugged. I said, Elsa, what happened? She said, Charlie, this isn't the Clarke Institute you knew. Things have changed. Patients aren't the same. And the staff isn't the same. She said, this isn't the Clarke Art Institute that you're visiting. It's called CAMH. It's the new reality of over-medication. I said, Elsa, they over-medicated patients back then. Oh no, she said. It's really changed. It's way over medication. She said, they don't have a rehabilitation component. Charlie, nobody plays cards with the patients even. She said, I want to show you something. And I didn't know where she was taking me. And we arrived at the piano. And it looked like it hadn't been played in years. And she looked at Selina and said, this is your daddy's piano. Your dad put this piano here. She said, do you play piano? And Selina said, yes, I play piano. And Elsa opened the piano, and Selina played. And Elsa and I went away to talk. And in the background, there was Selina playing this out-of-tune piano. And I realized, times change. They don't treat people like they used to. Something about Toronto fills me full of wonder. Something about Toronto makes me buckle under. Was it love that brought me? Did I come here by blunder? Something about Toronto town. CN Tower looming, a beacon for them lost souls. Caffeine morning grooming, slipping into work clothes. Skyline rearranging, things forever changing. Farewell to Toronto town. Farewell to Toronto town. Ron Weihs and I have been working together for 25 years. The Artword Theatre used to be in Toronto, and I used to be in Toronto. And he's my director, he's my co-writer, and as you can see, he's my musical accompaniment. And he has been my director for all of my plays. Judith has been in front of the scenes and behind the scenes for all those years as well. And they are the proprietors of this wonderful establishment. Please give them an enormous hand.